It is being moved by the timeless principle, timelessness of the principle. And so that 5,000-year period came in, whether anyone thought they were ready for it or not, and with it came a completely new structure symbol, a new symbol. And that symbol was Christ Jesus as that individual who was the Christ, the individual who had the Christ consciousness, who was the Christ. So the symbol is Christ Jesus and the Christian church. And that true sense of church, as what he said to Peter, upon the conscious acknowledgement of what I am as the Christ, this is where my church is and what my church is. So that every individual in his experience who had that consciousness, who knew that he was the Christ, who acknowledged that, was a Christian and was a member of the Christian church. And that church was a very loose structure at that time, very loose. It met in it met in homes. Right. Met in homes. It met in friendly places, quietly. Just a few gathered together, and yet you can see that the whole quality of the idea was there. The whole quality of the true sense of what church is was manifested, was translated, and took the form of such a gathering of individuals. Individuals who were putting on the Christ consciousness. As a counterfeit of that, you have what? Denominational Christianity. The attempt to organize Christianity, which I believe began with Constantine, that attempt to try to organize the whole thing. Wasn't he the first one who took up Christianity and was really, so to say, outside of the circle, so-called, and wanted to make Christianity the state religion? And so began the decline of denominalizing Christianity. But you know what we have to see, that in every period where you have that counterfeit that looks so big, so prominent, so real, that all that counterfeit is the other side of one coin. That you have two sides of a coin. As though the principle would say, this is what I am, this is what I am not. This is what I am, this is what I am not. This is what I am, this is what I am not. So you have that, that I can't help but bring in that wonderful term that Mrs. Eddy uses, the equipollence of God. The equipollence of God. If we see that those days of creation really are the 7 days that are patterned by the nature of God, the definition of God, the sevenfold definition of God, that they are themselves have a deep structure, the deep structure of the definition of God as mind, spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, and love. We see that the nature of God is stamping itself across time, and so you have, with the first period, the statement that principle makes, this is what I am as mind, and this is what I am not. This is what mind is, this is what mind is not. Second 1,000-year period, this is what spirit is, this is what spirit is not. Third 1,000-year period, this is what soul is, this is what soul is not. So you have that equipollence of God. Equivalence meaning equivalency of statement. You have two statements that mean the same thing, that say the same thing. If the principle says, I am mind, I am not mortal mind, that's the same thing, isn't it? I am mind, I am not mortal mind is the same thing. So you have this beautiful balance going through the whole of the evolution, the whole of Christian history. And so the appearance of the denominational sense of Christianity is just the appearing of what that true church is not. So to say, this is what I'm not in the 5,000-year period. Well, you know that at the close of the Bible is not the close of the 5,000-year period, but the Bible closes within the 5,000-year period, and we need to see something very important at that point. So we said that we come now to the close of the Bible, that we are still in the 5,000-year period, and I said that there is a very significant happening at the close of the Bible. That happening was St. John's revelation. And so you have really coming in a new symbol, the symbol of the city four square. This is a symbol that we cannot afford not to look at. That it is pointing the way to a new structure of consciousness. Because actually John said that he saw a new heaven and a new earth, didn't he? The old heaven and earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. It was something completely new coming in. An immaterial structure of consciousness. That city four square, with its four sides and its gates opening, its doors opening within and without. You know that Mrs. Eddy refers to that structure at the close of her textbook. John brings it in at the close of the Bible. Mrs. Eddy brings it in again at the close of her textbook and lifts that symbolism up into the language of Christian Science. She says those four equal sides are the Word, the Christ, Christianity, and science. Very, very important point here. So you see that the 5,000-year period is already pointing towards a higher structure, even higher than what we have seen so far. As we come into the 6,000-year period, the structure symbol changes again. It becomes the Christian Science textbook. The textbook itself, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, becomes the symbol for that structure of consciousness into which to enter and to worship God, to serve God, to be at one with your principle. There's so much one could say at this point, because there is such a correlation between the city four square and the structure of the Christian Science textbook, of how that structure of the textbook is the city four square, how it is patterned with the same patterned by the four sides of that city, how it is a textbook of the Word, the Christ, Christianity and science. The counterfeit, what does the counterfeit look like in the 6,000-year period? The counterfeit of that beautiful sense of the textbook as the structure of consciousness. The structure of consciousness is countered by the attempt to confine Christian Science in organization. That is the counterfeit. You try to find Christian Science in organization, to confine it there. So we will see as we go on in our study, maybe not today, but as we progress and go on, we will see that the textbook is the structure of truth and love. The textbook becomes the true church. It is the symbol of the true church. It is the symbol of the new consciousness, the new structure of consciousness. See, all that is restructuring over these 1,000-year periods is consciousness, isn't it? Is one's consciousness of the individual's conscious awareness of his relationship to God, his relationship to his principle. And then we come to the 7,000-year period, and we are coming into the 7,000-year period, and we feel that something new is coming in. It's so right, it's so natural that the old is breaking down. It is so indicative of what is coming, that something new is coming, something that we cannot extrapolate. You cannot extrapolate from the old. You know what I mean? You cannot take the old and then figure out from the way the old was what the new will be. But we live in a wonderful age. We live in the most exciting age. Just think, no one has ever been here before. No one has ever been on the verge of that period of fulfillment, of that age of fulfillment, of that age of divine love, the age of divine science. And that's what we are feeling, that divine science is coming in. And what will the structure symbol be? What is the symbol that is impelling itself on us at this point in the whole development? It is the fundamentals themselves of universal science, the categories of the divine principle, the system of the divine principle, the science of the divine principle, the structure of the divine principle, the system and science of that principle. What is coming on us is not the mere letter, because the mere letter would be the counterfeit. The mere letter will be the counterfeit. But what is coming on us is the consciousness of the categories of being, the consciousness of the fundamentals of universal science. So that it's not just a statement of what they are, it's not just an intellectual exercise in what they are, it's not just an academic reading of what they are, but it's a complete restructuring of consciousness. And what we see in the Christian Science Church as the overturning of that form is the working of that consciousness, is the working of the establishing of the immaterial science of being, the science of Christian Science. And so we would have to ask, what are these fundamentals, right? If we've come here today to hear this talk and we follow the line of reasoning of it, the logic of it, we must ask, what fundamentals are you talking about? What are you talking about? What is the system of the universal Christ science? What is that system? And so can you see that with this evolution of church, that that structure, to consider structure is to consider organization. You see, wherever you have structure, you have organization. You have organization. Structure is something composed of interrelated parts forming an organization. So, church is the organization of truth and love. Church is the organization of the principle. How the principle is organized. Do you know that? Do you realize that a principle organizes itself? Do you know what that means? It means that it structures itself and restructures itself. So that wherever you have structure, there's organization. Organization is organic structure. I'm just throwing this out to you because we have been so trained in that term organization. When we hear it, we hear only one thing. That's right. One thing, right? What do you hear when church, the old sense of church, organization, that there's a hierarchy, a church hierarchy, and that government feeds down. It's government from the top down. A political situation. And so we need to be re-educated in what organization is. In what organization is. Organization is organic structure. What does organic mean? Organic is of or involving the basic makeup of a thing. Inherent, constitutional, made up of systematically interrelated parts. Systematically interrelated parts. So we now are moving away from our great general statement that that the true church is the structure of truth and love, whatever rests upon and proceeds from the divine principle. Now we begin to see that if we have structure, we must have organization. If we have organization, we must have system. If we have system, we have interrelated parts, parts that are organized. So we have the whole implication of system coming out. And you know, so often when you talk to a Christian Scientist about system, he's turned off